Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Something's Wrong podcast. We're back again. This time it's so late, it's actually getting close to the true horror movie season, autumn. Oh Christ! All right, hang on. I got to get through this. It's werewolf time. It's time for the one about werewolves. In fact, I'm introducing a whole new type of episode. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be called the fucking film Faceoff. All right? No one's ever seen anything like this before. What I'm gonna do is I'm taking two films that I think are basically the same movie, and then you figure out which one is the better version of that movie. Now, if you're thinking this doesn't really make any sense, it's probably because I didn't explain it very well. But here's an example. The example being what we're doing today. And today what we're going to do is we're going to compare two 1981 werewolf horror movies. And those movies are The Howling and An American Werewolf in London. Now, those of you who have watched these movies and are, self-professed film buffs rather than actual professional film buffs like myself might be thinking, hey, Dick, Mr. Hickok, those are two pretty different movies. One of them's supposed to be a comedy and shit, and the other one's and I say shut the fuck up, because as you know, I'm right, and this is my podcast, and you aren't even here, so I'm gonna do my thing, okay? So we're comparing The Howling, 1981, directed by Joe Dante, and American Werewolf in London, 1981, directed by John Landis. Okay, so let's start off. Brief summary of each movie, okay? Real quick this time. Not like I normally say, where I say, okay, real quick summary, and then I go for about an hour, and then the podcast ends. This is different. We're moving into a new phase, new beginnings, new ideas. Very new ideas. It's werewolf time. Awwwww. Awwwww. Apologize. I lost my voice trying to teach my nephew how to drive stick, as I lost my license in the rainstorm the other day. Real terrible stuff. But yeah, it took a lot out of my voice, so we're just gonna have to roll with it. I hope you all like the new timbre, because it's gonna be like this for the next hour or so, or less. Could be less. Anyway, summary of The Howling. Howling, 1981. There's a woman. She's a TV reporter. Oh shit. Oh yeah. Okay. She's a TV reporter. Her name is Karen. Don't judge her just yet. She's all right. She's all right for a Karen. Okay, she's trying to lure in a serial killer / rapist / criminal guy, and she volunteered to help with the investigation with her fucking weird older husband's permission, and so she chooses to be part of the investigation by using herself as bait, because she had been in contact with the killer, whose name is oh god, what's in the notes here? No, the killer, he's under like an assumed name or something. What the fuck? Goes. Cut. Eddie. The killer's name is Eddie. It's like some weird name, Eddie Quayle, something like that. They find out his name later because he's like a total recluse. He has like a shitty apartment. But anyway, he corners her in what is starting to turn into an undesired theme for this podcast, which is like a sex shop, sex movie theater. And so he like lures her there, and she goes there, and then she comes in contact with him. He leaves like smiley faces, and he lures her to this sex shop movie theater thing, and then she's in the stands, and he comes up behind her, and he attacks her, and he attacks her in a weird way, and she sees his face, but it's blurred out for us, the audience, so you don't know what happens. And you're like, oh no, oh man, she looks really horrified. What is she seeing on his face? Because as soon as she sees his face, she's like, no, and can't even do anything. Like, she's like totally immobilized in terror. And it's like, oh, what happened? But then the police show up and they shoot him a bunch through the door, and so she survives, but she doesn't remember what the guy's face looks like, and they like shot him up to all hell, so they can't really tell what his face looks like either. But anyway, the detectives, they find like his apartment, they find a bunch of drawings of werewolves and like posts, like newspaper clippings of unsolved murders. Total weirdo. Wow, sure glad that segment of her life is over, right? So in order to deal with this trauma, she visits her psychologist, who invites her and her husband up to like a special like lodge camp town thing that the psychologist runs, and he thinks that like, oh, being out in nature with a small community will help kind of bring out the repressed memories and help you confront your fears and stuff. And of course he gets up there and it's weird, and everyone's kind of weird and eccentric somehow. An old man named Earl tries to kill himself by walking into a fire, and then the psychologist talks him out of it. A lot of weird encounters like that. They have an encounter with the village slut or whatever named Marcia, yeah. She comes in, she's just dressed in like furs or whatever. Yeah, it's like blah blah blah. Yeah, everyone's kind of weird. Yeah. Karen, she finds like another like female friend there, and she wears jorts to tennis, which I don't think is ever a very good idea, but it's 1981, different times, whatever. That's not important to the plot. Anyway, in LA, they find that Eddie's body is gone. Karen's hearing, back in the lodge, Karen's hearing weird noises in the night, and like, by the way, back in LA, Karen's two like reporter friends are around, kind of trying to investigate more for some reason, because there's like little there's some holes in the story, and they're trying to find out. And eventually they kind of get around to like, maybe this guy is a werewolf. And it's like, oh man, now we're finally getting to the part where we talk about werewolves in the movie. And this is all taking a while, but yeah, Bill ends up going to Marcia's. Bill is Karen's husband, and he's a turd because he gets seduced by Marcia, and he goes over to her fucking cottage to cook rabbits, which is ridiculous. But he goes over to her and she like kisses him, and he goes like, oh, don't do that. And he goes and walks back through the woods, and he gets attacked by a werewolf, and he gets bit by the werewolf, and he's like, shit. And meanwhile, this time Karen calls her friends, and but only her one female friend can make it. Her friend's husband can't make it, who's also a news guy. Bill starts showing signs of, being weird and different. He was a vegetarian before, and now he eats meat and shit. And then he goes out and he goes out and fucks Marcia more, and it's just, they have weird I forgot about this. They have weird growly transforming werewolf sex. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, blah blah blah. Werewolf, slowly they kind of figure out, the news friend finds out there's werewolves, and Karen starts to believe her. Then Karen's friend gets attacked by Eddie as a werewolf, who's come back because werewolves can't be killed except by like silver bullets or whatever. Her name is Terry. She gets bit on the neck and dies, and Eddie transforms and shit, and he's a werewolf. And then eventually Terry's husband and Karen's other friend comes back, comes back with a gun with silver bullets, and it finds out Karen finds her body, and like it goes like, oh, and then she gets kidnapped by the people of the cottage or the village, and it turns out they're all werewolves. Oh shit, they're all werewolves, and apparently there's infighting, or some just want to go out and kill people, and then the psychologist guy, he's also a werewolf, and he's like, no, we got to try and integrate society and eat fucking cattle and shit. And but like the rest of them just kind of want to kill. And but then Chris, the guy's name is Chris, Terry's husband and Karen's friend, he shows up with a gun and silver bullets, and he kills a bunch of werewolves, and kind of herds the rest of them into the big barn where they were meeting, and then sets it on fire, and so a lot of the werewolves get burned to death that way. Yeah, they just kind of like, and then they try and drive out of there, and they run into a bunch of werewolves and have to either kill them or drive the car around them. And then at the last moment, one werewolf gets in and bites Karen, and she shoots the gun. And as it turns out, that last werewolf that bit her was Bill. Oh, damn, total tragedy. And the movie ends with she does a freaking she does a news report on werewolves, and it's basically saying that werewolves are real, and then to prove it, she turns into a werewolf because she got bit by Bill the werewolf, and so then she turns into a werewolf on set, and then has her friend Chris shoot her in the heart with a silver bullet on camera live, but that nobody fucking believes it, or like a bunch of people don't believe it. They're just like, wow, shit they put on TV these days. And then the movie ends with Marsha being in like a bar with some guy and ordering a fucking rare hamburger, which is disgusting. So that movie, that's a summary of The Howling, 1981. Boom. American Werewolf in London. Go. Shit, I kind of watched this in 2 parts over the course of like 6 months, so bear with me here. There's two guys. Oh fuck, what is his name? Oh. Yeah, 2 college guys named they're named Jack and Dave and Jack, and so they're 2 like American college dude bros backpacking through the British countryside, and yeah, it's like it becomes they go around and they go to this, they're walking through the moors of like northern England or Scotland or something, and they come to this pub full of very superstitious, unfriendly people. So they get kind of kicked out of the pub, and then they're told not to walk on the moors, but that they want to just fucking get to the next place, and they go and walk through the moors, and then they get attacked by a werewolf, and Jack gets mauled to death by the werewolf, and then Dave gets injured and bit by the werewolf, and then the townspeople show up and kill the werewolf. But not before it bit Dave, and he passes out, and Jack's dead. And Dave wakes up in the hospital, and he's a freaking, obviously, what the fuck else do you think is gonna happen? He's a werewolf, right? But what's different about this is he has his friend Jack comes back to him as a revenant in a vision and tells him like, hey dude, you're gonna become a werewolf, and you need to kill yourself, otherwise more people are gonna die. This is pretty bad. And, a bunch of other shit happens. He gets in an affair with this nice British nurse, and, like, not even an affair. I'm pretty sure he's a single guy, so he gets in a fling with her and, falls in love and stuff. But then he realizes, oh, man, I'm still a werewolf and I'm going to have to die. But the problem is he eventually, he never comes around to killing himself. So eventually he goes on a final rampage, and yeah, that's basically the movie. He eventually goes on a rampage. All right, so that's a summary of the 2 movies, right? Why are they the same movie, you ask? That doesn't sound like the same movie. Well, it is the same movie. You know why? Because I didn't really pay attention. They're both from 1981, same style of movie, roughly same level of special effects, but they're a little different, and I'll get into that. And they both are just guys, unassuming guys that turn into werewolf movies, right? Wolfman, werewolf, full moon shit, silver bullets, regular bullets, whatever. Same thing. Okay. But here's the thing. American Werewolf in London, way better. Here's why. Number one, weird Brit. No, that was not. That's a bad thing. That's actually a point against it that it has British people. I'm not a fan of that. More supernatural stuff right off the bat. I'm a fan of that. It's pretty good. Okay, it's got more supernatural stuff. It's funnier. You know, it's meant to be a comedy. John Landis is a famed comedy director. He wrote like The Blues Brothers and some National Lampoon shit, and like Michael Jackson's Thriller music video. Yeah, he did like Animal House and some other shit. Yeah, he's pretty good. So he's a funny guy. He knows how to make a funny movie. The Howling, not meant to be funny at all, even though it is, right? Because The Howling, it's supposed to be like a very serious movie about like trauma that then becomes a werewolf horror story. But, you know, the problem is that werewolf horror stories are very rarely done in a way where they can be super serious, because eventually someone has to turn to a wolf man, you know? And werewolves in LA, a little bit weird. Now, The Howling was based off of a novel from like the 1970s or something. Like, when was it? All right, blah 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 blah. The Howling. It also had some sequels, but I don't think I'm gonna watch them because it was based on another novel from 1979, and the novel had even more sexual assault, because that was actually like that was the initial conflict point of the novel, was that that Karen was like sexually assaulted in her own home by this guy, and in the movie they changed that because that's miserable, and they changed it so she is actually like, she's like a reporter trying to confront a serial murderer, and like, it kind of just, it fleshes it out more. That's definitely an improvement that I would have taken, rather than just like, oh, well, you got attacked in your own home, and now your husband decides, let's go to couples therapy up in the woods in the cabin run by this shady psychologist dude. In this case, at least it was like, it wasn't just like freaking trauma bait for no reason, right? Anyway, I think that that's better, but still, it still makes it kind of a theoretically bitter, grueling film. But the problem is, it gets a little silly. Okay, I should have really put down a list of like pros and cons. But yeah, right. Okay, I'll just do a list of pros and cons right now. That's way better. Let's do it off the cuff. Let's do this shit. Right. Pros: American Werewolf of London. Sense of humor. Supernatural stuff off the bat. I have a note here, Dick and Balls observed. That is a pro, I think, in my book, because you do get to see Dave's, at least his balls. You get to see him kind of from the back, because at one point, after his initial rampage, he wakes up in a wolf pen at a zoo, and he has to climb out of the wolf pen. He's just like, hey guys, hanging out with the wolves. And he gets up, and you can see his nuts as he's climbing over the wall and climbing up and out of the enclosure. And yeah, I guess it's just, lucky the wolves can't climb, because that looked like a real easy wall to climb, considering that it's supposed to keep in a bunch of fucking wolves. But anyway, yeah, it sticks with the mythology. That's another pro. It doesn't try and make its own shit. It just goes classic full moon mythology. It's got like kind of a interesting, creepy setting. Like The Howling, it's just a setting in the woods. They're just hanging out in the woods, and you can't really tell the difference between, well, I mean, you can tell the difference between the woods and LA, but there's nothing really that like unique about these woods. They're supposed to be just, in the Pacific Northwest, but yeah, it's just the woods. But this one, American Werewolf in London, it's got like the Northern England Scottish moorlands. Fuck, whatever. Anyway, yeah. And then, also final werewolf rampage in American Werewolf in London. Excellent. So good. because once again, spoiler alert, at the end he goes on a big fucking rampage and bites a dude's head off and goes running through the street and causes a bunch of car accidents. And honestly, he kills more people through car accidents than he does through biting people, but he still tears some ass. I don't. Yeah, we'll go with it. He tears ass. Fine. Yeah, and okay, right. And then some pros for the Howling. I think that it does better than American Werewolf in London. Mainly, oddly enough, even though American Werewolf in London is known for its really cool initial transformation scene, I honestly like the Howling a little bit better, because it's like the Howling one. Both movies used like real prosthetics and like stop motion and shit to make the man to werewolf transformation happen. But the Howling, well, actually, the Howling gets marked down like half a point because it used fucking like hand drawn animation over. I don't know what that's. I think it's like maybe stereograph or something like that, where it's like hand drawn animation overlaid over the real scene. Like I saw that shit in the 1970s remake of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the C.S. Lewis fucking Narnia movie, and it had the same shit where it was all like puppets and like hand drawn animation things mixed together in the same scene, and it looked kind of silly, but it also had some real visceral, gross looking, gooey fucking prosthetics, and it looked like it looked gross. The werewolf looked like, now once again, I guess maybe not supposed to be a comedy, but American Werewolf in London also had a really cool transformation scene. I just think the Howling was just that much more grotesque, and so in this particular category, Howling wins. It's just, yeah, there's a lot of there's just random like goo and shit, and you can see like the muscles stretching, and it looks fucking crazy, even though it's sort of to the detriment of the plot, because the transformation takes like fucking 2.5 minutes, and then like at one point it's like Eddie the werewolf, he's like transforming in front of either Karen or Terry. I don't really remember at this point. I watched this a while ago, and I did not want to rewatch it because I don't care about werewolf films anymore. I watched the two best ones from the 80s. Whatever, bro. But yeah, he was transforming in front of, I think it was in front of Karen, but he took like a full like 2.5 minutes to transform, and Karen just kind of like looked at him, and she didn't like run away. She was just, once again, I guess she's just like in shock again. But eventually, like after 2 minutes, like just as he finished transforming, by the way, you couldn't like try and grab her while he was transforming or whatever. He just like kind of stood there in front of her and went like, "Ah." And Karen eventually grabbed a flask of acid, because I guess this was like some type of lab. Yeah, she was in like, it was like a lab, I think. It was like the psychologist had a chemistry lab for some reason. And yeah, she took an open vial of acid and threw it at him right as he finished transforming. He was like, fuck, shit. But, kind of worth it for the cool transformation scene, even if it didn't really work. The American Werewolf in London, his transformation scene, he was trying to not let it happen. And so it made sense that it was taking a long time. And he was in his apartment alone by himself, so there weren't a bunch of people just like standing around watching him doing this. So all that kind of worked better within the structure of the film for American Werewolf in London, but I still have to give the transformation scene to the Howling, I think. Other than that, Howling does not get a lot of it doesn't get a lot of points over American Werewolf in London. Like, a lot of people in the Howling are kind of assholes. Like, Karen's boss is an asshole. Karen's she's like a nice lady, but like a lot of people around her are assholes. Bill always just seems kind of like frustrated. He becomes significantly worse after he becomes a werewolf, which makes sense. That all makes sense. But like, a lot of people are just kind of jerks. Like, even like the shopkeeper that Chris and Terry go to learn about werewolves and werewolf books and shit like that. Even he's like, he's like just saying like, I don't give a shit, fucking whatever, just buy something or get out. He's like, it's like, dude, you have like a fucking treasure trove of werewolf mythology. Why are you still just such like a sleaze bag? Like you seems like you're very well established. Like you have a freaking cathedral of books and a whole section about the paranormal. Like you can't be doing so poorly where you're like ushering people out of your store. It's a fucking bookstore, dude. Chill out. But yeah, Karen's the nicest character in the movie, other than her two friends who actually do eventually come to her aid. But she's like other than kind of at the very beginning of the movie and the very end, the rest of the time she is just like totally passive and just like going like and it's like I know she's like traumatized, but at a certain point in like the final scene where they're driving out, she could be holding the gun or doing something, or maybe let her drive if Chris wants to hold the gun. Like Chris is holding the gun initially, he kills a bunch of the werewolves, locks a bunch of them in a barn, they get in a car and they start driving, right? And so it's like, okay, well, if he's holding the gun and he wants to shoot, let Karen drive. But no, they can't let a woman fucking drive in these movies. So Chris is trying to drive and like hold the gun whenever they have to stop, which they have to do a lot because the werewolves set up freaking roadblocks. The werewolf sheriff set up a werewolf roadblock on the werewolf road. And Chris has to like stop the car to shoot at them so then they could go while Karen screams in the passenger seat. And eventually she does get a hold of the gun because Chris is like wrestling with a fucking werewolf at the window, but she like misses all of her shots, and Chris eventually has to take the gun from her and shoot more werewolves. And she eventually does kill one, and then it's her husband, which is kind of tragic. And once again, that's the movie trying to be kind of like a tragic drama horror type of movie. But the problem is, once again, it's werewolves, and some of them are fucking stop motion, hand drawn animation. So the serious note just doesn't really resonate with the audience. And by the audience, I mean me. I couldn't take it. I just could not take it that seriously. And, you know, as I said before, American Werewolf in London, not trying to be taken seriously, but in some cases actually does manage to supersede the Howling in getting an emotional reaction. You know, even though Dave is just like a dickhead frat dude, like the love he has for British nurse Alex, who draws a fucking X like that? Jesus, come on. But yeah, it seems like a more genuine, like loving relationship than Karen has with Bill, even before Bill gets seduced by the werewolf witch doctor. Like Marsha's just like some white lady, but like she dresses in like bones and furs and shit. She's like a werewolf shaman or something like that. And she seduces Bill somehow, I guess through magic werewolf powers or something. Anyway, doesn't really matter, but the relationship in An American Werewolf in London is a lot better. And they literally met like over the course of a week in a professional setting. And so, yeah, what is that? What does that put it, like 10-1 American Werewolf in London? Yeah. Is that anything else? What else did I write down here? Yeah, no. Yeah, and in the end, American Werewolf in London is still probably more tragic than The Howling, because Nurse Alex, she finds him. She kind of finally believes the werewolf stuff and tries to track down Dave the werewolf. And Dave the werewolf already has failed to kill himself and went on a werewolf rampage through London and got himself trapped in the alleyway. And he kind of looks like a weird big scruffy dog. Like it's another part that's funny. He's just like, he's kind of like fluffy, like, you know, obviously ferocious and like stalks around like a freaky wolf man, but also is like kind of this weird fluffy thing with round eyes that just looks really angry. It looks like a really angry like Persian cat, like the Fancy Feast cat. You ever seen the Fancy Feast commercials? Not to you know, Fancy Feast is probably not going to ever give me a sponsorship, but if they were, I wish they did, and that would be really cool. Because I liked that cat, and frankly, I'm pretty sure they had, I think it's like a CGI cat on there now, but it's the big fluffy long-haired white Persian posh kitty cat. And yeah, personally, I don't think I could be like that cat, but I think possibly I could train a cat or possibly two cats. I think two cats might even be better if I could train two cats to do what the original cat used to do in the Fancy Feast commercial, which is really just go over to the Fancy Feast food in like a fucking crystal diamond, South African Elon Musk diamond mined crystal bowl and just eat. And I'm pretty sure I can train a fluffy Persian cat or possibly two big fluffy Persian cats to eat. And so if Fancy Feast would like to sponsor the Something's Wrong podcast, I'm entirely open to it. What the fuck was I talking? Oh, yeah. So the werewolf kind of looks like that a little bit. And oh, right. Yes, right. You're talking about the final scene. He looks like that cat, like an angry ass, really fucking enraged version of that cat when he's got his like ass crammed between a dumpster and a building. And the British have finally brought out their gun police, because for the most part they just have the bobbies. And they just have like clubs and shit, and they don't have guns. And so when they all come up to it's another freaking movie theater. I don't think it was a porn theater again, but that would be quite a crazy theme for the Something's Wrong podcast if it was. It might have been just a regular movie theater. But yeah, that's where he finally transforms for his final rampage transformation. And then so all the bobbies come in with their silly hats and their like wooden fucking rolling pins, and they come up to the door and try and fucking barricade it because they think there's a psychopath in there. And the werewolf busts out, and none of them can do anything because they just have a bunch of clubs. And then the werewolf bites off a dude's head and then starts rampaging through the streets. And then one of those big fucking double-decker buses flips over and crushes some shit. It's pretty great. It's honestly an excellent scene. And a payoff to what otherwise would have been not a boring movie, but, obviously it had like a comedy budget, but, it put the budget in the right places. That's what I really like about it. Oh, right. The point was, this is the end of the rampage, right? He's trapped in the alley, and Nurse Alex finds him, and she manages to get past the police somehow. I guess she just has, crazy adrenaline, love strength or something like that. And she pushes through all the police, and she runs down to the end of the alley, and it's like, David, please, it's me. And for a second, David looks like he might soften up. Maybe the beast will give way to the power of love for a second, but then he goes and then jumps out of the trash, and then gets shot by what must be the best fucking marksman in all of London, because they managed to shoot right past Nurse Alex and riddle the werewolf. And I guess this werewolf doesn't need silver bullets, because I guess it got killed with a shotgun earlier in the movie, and I guess that shotgun didn't have silver bullets, and neither do the police rifles. So yeah, but it's very tragic. At the very end, Alex is kind of like crying and shit. And the old doctor man is kind of like, I think he was either a doctor or a detective. I think he was a doctor, and he had also been kind of investigating this whole time. But yeah, he comes over and comforts her, and it's honestly a very tragic scene. Probably more tragic than Karen having to kill frickin' adulterer Bill after he bit her, had slapped her, had like cheated on her. Like, basically, he was terrible. He needed to go either way. Like, Karen, sure, tragic figure, but the situation felt a lot more tragic and a lot less comedic, ironically, at the end of the comedy movie. So yeah, really, what's that, fucking 74 to 1 for An American Werewolf in London? Oh, make that 75 to 1, because American Werewolf in London also had better music. As cool, it had cool contemporary music, and the music was all had a theme, and it added to the comedy, even if it wasn't all that funny. Like, they played Bad Moon Rising. It's a popular song, like probably like 10 years or so before this movie was made, but it's remained a pretty popular song. And that makes you think, oh, full moon, werewolves, cool shit. And they played it like while the transformation is occurring, and so that makes it kind of funny because you got this kind of upbeat. It's like down 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 while Dave is like in agony and having his bones stretched out of his ass or whatever. So yeah, the music is better. Oh right, and the Howling music. You know what the Howling music was? Is fucking like evil haunted castle organ, just like na 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 na, just like shit like that. Is literally just like fucking creepy castle gothic music. It was like nothing distinctive to the time period, which was odd because American Werewolf in London had a more traditional mythology. With the Howling, it was just like, oh, werewolves can transform at any place and any time. And these were werewolves that were sometimes they were just living in the streets of LA and like killing people there. And it's like, these are like modern werewolves. They aren't living in a fucking vampire castle. Like that would probably be more fitting out on the misty moorlands of northern United Kingdom. So yeah, once again, another weird attempt by the Howling, almost to make it more serious, I'd assume, because it was serious sounding music, but it's in the middle of like a 1980s werewolf action horror set in the modern day. So I don't know why it was like dun, 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 dun. And just like, yeah, shit like that. No 80s techno, nothing cool, nothing that original. So yeah, once again, not American Horror Story. We'll have an episode about American Horror Story, but that has nothing to do with what the fuck I'm talking about right now. American Werewolf in London clobbers the Howling at almost every turn, except maybe, and I might even have to give this a rewatch, but I think the Howling had a somewhat better transformation scene. But honestly, other than that, I guess maybe, you could argue that the Howling gets an extra point because it has more fucking werewolves in it, just by sheer amount of werewolves. Like American Werewolf in London only had 2. It had the original werewolf that was just like some unidentified crazy man, and then it had Dave the werewolf whose friend is telling him to kill himself. And the Howling had like a whole town full of werewolves who still didn't manage to kill more than like 2 people the whole movie. So yeah, honestly, yeah, that sucked too. Like seriously, there's fucking 40 werewolves in that movie, and they managed to kill like 3 people. Like if you count, I mean, I guess not if you're counting all of like, all the unsolved mysteries or whatever, and like, people have been disappearing and mauled in an animal attack and blah blah blah, like all of like, they have like little like background information that kind of goes on with like, different fake like fictional news clips and stuff like that, talking about animal attacks and disappearances and things like that. If you count that, then sure. But as far as on-screen deaths, American Werewolf in London knocks it out of the park with a fucking probably like a 20, an average. If you average it out, if my math is correct here, it's probably like, I think it's something like 20 kills per werewolf. If you count all the chaos that the werewolves that the werewolves caused, especially Dave the werewolf, damn dude, really should have just picked a way to deal with that, or like fucking gone on the boat back to America or something. But that's okay, because you got to see him maul a bunch of British people, and there's nothing. Few things bring greater joy to my life than watching that on the big screen or the small screen. I had to watch it on like, once again, on like Pluto TV or some shit like that. I don't remember where I saw it. Maybe Shudder, one of those. Also, neither of those are sponsors of my podcast, so they can go fuck themselves. But yeah, I think, you know what? Wrapped this up pretty quick. Oh, actors. There were actors in both of these movies. I mean, the acting wasn't all that terrible in either one. Both were kind of like dramatic. Like really, I think they're roughly equal in performances. I didn't notice a ton of like. It's probably because I don't know all the old motherfuckers in these movies. Usually, especially like these '80s horror movies, they tend to have like a lot of older great actors who kind of who are either like their careers in decline or like coming out of retirement just to do like fun shit. And so they'll have like older actors who are apparently like really famous in the 50s and 60s, and then they bring them out for these 80s horror movies to give the cast some life, you know? But like yeah, I didn't recognize any of them because I'm not 1,000 years old, and I have more my memories tend to be a little bit more modern, if you know what I mean. And by that I mean I only have memories in the 2000s through no fault of my own. Well, a little bit of my fault. Whatever, not important. Doesn't matter. Yeah, American Werewolf in London absolutely trashes The Howling any day, just by through virtue of sheer entertainment and kind of attributes that better fit the theme of the movie. Yeah, no, the acting, I honestly, I couldn't really. There were some actors like the actor who played the doctor, in that in American Werewolf in London. Yeah, it was like John Woodvine. John Woodvine? Damn, I don't know. I don't know who that is. Is he important? Oh my god, he's still alive. Holy shit. John Woodvine is 94 years old. He's still alive. I don't know if he's had a lot of like kind of little roles, but I guess never that huge of a breakout actor, but I guess he's like in theater a lot, and then like was in some movies and stuff. But yeah, not a ton of like huge famous actors as far as I can tell in either of these movies, but both had pretty solid performances to the point where I'd say that I wouldn't really give a point in favor to each of them or to either of them for having better actors over another. Yeah, like I don't know who these guys are. Christopher Stone. Is he famous? Man, he's old too. Oh, he died. R.I.P. R.I.P. Christopher Stone. Sorry, Bill. Dee Wallace. Oh, I think Dee Wallace has to be someone. Oh, right. She was in E.T. Oh, was she the mom in E.T.? Holy shit. I'm finding out things new every time I go back and do research in the middle of the recording. Career, blah, blah, blah. Played lead role. Oh, and Christopher Stone was her husband in real life. That's cool. Yikes. Either they are actually pretty good actors, or that relationship is pretty rough if that's how they thought they should act for that relationship role. She played the mom. Star in Okay, what? Come on, just show me what her character was. Mary? Who's Mary? Mary must have been the mom. Single mother. Yeah, she was the mom from E.T. Knew it. Called it. So yeah, I guess she's pretty good. She's a good actress. But then again, so a lot of the actors in American Werewolf in London were stellar actors too. So yeah, can't quite give either one an edge. So it's like one point to The Howling and then like a tie. Yeah, get the fuck out of here. The Howling still, I think, is a pretty important werewolf movie, in the sense that it was one that was actually sort of decent, but it's just compared to American Werewolf in London, which is obviously kind of the more famous one, it doesn't quite compare. But hey, check that one out too, The Howling. It's another classic. So even though it lost big time on this fucking film Faceoff, still go check it out. Oh shit, I didn't read a fucking story. Damn it. Oh, damn it. Hang on. Let me see. All right, hang on. We gotta just pick one. We gotta just pick a Reddit NOSLEEP. You gotta pick one. Gotta pick one. No, just go here. Go to the subreddit. No, I gotta just pick one real quick. From top from today. Yeah, how about top ones from today? How about blah blah blah. Boyfriend I wish come true. No, it's a series. Worked okay, how about here's a classic where someone worked somewhere. I sure do love stories where someone worked at a place. Oh, actually, you know what? Instead of that, how about I put up a camera and caught what was haunting me? Or, I don't know, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Want a work one? I don't know if we've done a work one yet. These are a classic where someone worked at a place and they tell you about a creepy thing that happened to them while they were at work. Okay, this one's called I worked at the fuck me, dude. I worked at the construct site for Diorama Tower. What really happened there is far worse than the public's knowledge. Comma in between those two phrases. Okay, this is by a user named Platinum Oni. Jesus. All right. I was one of the people at the epicenter of one of the biggest failures in architectural history. That's a good start, actually. Okay, actually in the story. Narrator mode. On. Do it. Go. I was one of the people at the epicenter of one of the biggest failures in architectural history. The Diorama Tower was a dream building conceived by 11 of America's top architects of the 21st century, but a series of disasters and controversies ended that dream. Well-known controversies included embezzlements, corruption, mafia connections, mistreatment of employees, and the biggest scandal of all, the fall of Robert Yates. The dream building eventually became the building of nightmares, and construction was halted 2 years after construction. Yes, it was a failure, but most of those were not why it was abandoned in the first place. Yates's death was the biggest one, but the reason we decided to stop the construction is what really caused Yates's demise. People die on construction sites often. I guess they do. But this in particular, ... it's far worse than any other construction-related fatality. All right, I'm just going to have to pause there, and I'm going to have to beg to differ, because I've seen some pretty fucking terrible construction-related fatalities. You could probably search up, probably the first result you get on the internet is probably going to be worse than whatever happens in this story. But, you know what? Let's see. Maybe something really horrible happens. Out of the 11 architects, a fellow named Wayne became the first director of the project, and because he was the most successful, the most experienced, and the most well-known of the 11, he naturally became the project's figurehead. His leadership was short-lived because he was discovered embezzling the funds for the project. He was quickly removed from the project even though he was the director. Yeah, okay, whatever. The second director, Stan, was the complete opposite of Wayne. He was pretty new to the world of architectural projects, but what made him the director was the fact that he was a rising star who had built a lot of iconic landmarks in specific cities across the states. Probably not even an exaggeration, but he's the greatest architect ever to set foot in America. Quick drink of water. Oh, God. Stan also had experience as an accountant, so his financial knowledge would be helpful anyway. Immediately, he would reclaim the embezzled funds by starting a fundraiser and taking some talking to the court, leading the council to keep on investing in the project. Then there was the second problem, where we had decided to build the apartments. It's located on an empty plot of grass that surrounds 4 neighborhoods. Neighborhoods is capitalized. While the scenery wasn't a big deal, the problem was that things started to get out of control when children started showing up to see the project and mess around. Yes, that was the problem. Children. Because they were children, they have zero ideas of the knowledge and importance of the building, not to mention children nowadays are rebellious, violent, and hedonistic. I'm not saying I hate children, but some really do get on my nerves. They are too dumb to live with us and should live somewhere else and not give us a bad time. Cut. We're back. There was pure silence except for the machinery noises for the first few days of the construction. When word spread to the residents that we were building a new apartment, people, especially children, started to come nearby, not because they were interested in the construction, but because the place where they used to play soccer was right next to the construction site. Over the past 2 weeks of the project, their soccer balls have entered our site more than 30 times. The last 2 have caused major disruption in the construction, causing workers to be pissed. From those 2 incidents, all we discuss at breaks is how horrible kids are. Hang on, I gotta see. How long are we running here? Okay, I gotta speed this up. The child we hated the most was the dark-haired boy, whose grimness, terror, and grotesqueness seemed to come straight out of a movie. He looked like a gothic vampire, although he acted completely normal like other kids, fooling around and kicking soccer balls. Therefore, in consultation with the construction site supervisor and the city council, the 20-meter radius from the construction site was turned into a no-entry zone for non-related personnel. To ensure the kids that this was taken seriously, we have also written that entering this site is essentially trespassing and could lead to being investigated by the cops. It was a good choice because children have stopped disrupting our construction since this rule was implemented. The project seemed to go well without any problems. But of course, there was someone who would ruin everything for the team. This is what exactly happened 4 days after the rule was implemented. During one meeting, Yates, looking out the window while discussing the next step, suddenly got up and ran outside angrily. When we caught up to him, it was too late. One of the children stepped on the concrete used to create the outliers of the building's area. What made this different is that this is the first time there was a deliberate sabotage attempt on our construction, not by accident, not a mistake, on purpose. Yates was furious, and it wasn't just the kids he was angry with. He was very frustrated with us. He blamed all of the kids' actions on us, and while we felt insulted, it was something we couldn't deny. For a few days, we were just focused on the construction work. Yates had been doing many things behind the scenes to prevent things from going wrong by teaching kids about safety hazards, which we all mocked as a waste of time. What did we do when he was trying to prevent this situation? Nothing. Meeting ended in a grim turn as we headed to the damaged scene to recover it. Yates promised that he would be here first thing at dawn to keep the construction site contacted by the ruffians, and he would not stop until he sent a legitimate message to the children. We took his word seriously this time, but didn't realize how much of a problem they would cause. That evening, Yates stayed behind to lock all the doors to the construction site, gave the key to the foreman, and while everyone else went to the hotel, he got a room near the construction site, and that was that. While walking to the hotel of Mr. Handball, who was very kind to us, he and his wife had been running the hotel for 22 years. We walked into the hotel of Mr. Handball, running the hotel for 22 years. Back to the story. Mr. Handball is a man with an unusual past. His father and grandfather were shamans. He is said to have divine powers. Damn, I hope it's not a werewolf shaman. If it's a werewolf shaman, I will throw my microphone out of my studio and into the garbage. Back to the story. Perhaps his charm drew me in, but I was the closest to him of all the workers at the construction site. While others went to their room at 9 p.m. The room? I used to stay up late, talk to some of his spiritual friends, and discuss the concepts of life and mortality. Over drinks, those of us at the hotel discussed Yates' reaction. Something was off about what he meant by will not stop. And that night, looking at the ceiling, I thought again. Quick drink of water. I'm sure people have thought this before. The villains in murder in movies feel embellished because it's entertainment. If you look at movies, there are a lot of villains, from tragic villains like Darth Vader to pure evil like the Joker. We don't feel anything when they kill because it's entertainment, drama, and theater. In real life, it's different. In real life, killing shows the darkest human emotions like fear, hatred, outrage, dismay. What I felt was confusion. Why? ... Yates. At the construction site, Yates asked us for one favor, in order to be exact. While we were sleeping in the hotel, Yates went on patrol and fought violently with a shadow that fell upon him. Believing his life was in danger, Yates struck the figure with a nearby brick, killing it. After cleaning himself, he looked at the body with a flashlight and was shocked to see he had murdered a child. We went where he had buried the boy. He looked like a character from one of those gothic movies. His body was as pale as Dracula's, wearing red with a cap on his head, and his eyes were pale as a skeleton. What scared us the most was not his face, but was surrounding the child's cadaver. Even though he looked like he had died a few hours ago, his body was covered in maggots. Ugh. I'd learned that just because you have a lot of muscle doesn't mean you're not scared. As the two biggest guys in the room gagged, and the Stan cowered. Fuck me, dude. Yates buried the boy again with fear in his eyes, and for some reason we decided to let him off the hook. Everything would have gotten right if it wasn't that the maggots started to crawl out of the soil into the construction site. Not just one or two, heaps of them crawling out of the soil like they had risen from the dead. Most of the futile efforts to escape the soil were stopped when we started to stomp on them and covered it with rocks, this time in hopes that this would bury the boy and Yates' murder. The maggots kept appearing, and the rocks did not stop the maggots from rising from the underground. If anything, they had grown to a laughably huge amount. In desperation, we decided to remove the rocks from the burial site and now let them cover them with concrete like Japanese yakuzas. Furthermore, we created a special wooden tool to ensure the concrete is hardened enough for nothing to come from the ground. And they stopped coming out for a while, and the rest of the day was gone planned, with one exception that we were now antagonizing Yates, who were turning more sensitive, more vile, and more obsessed throughout the day. What the fuck, dude? Need a quick drink of water. Sweet, sweet water. Back to the story. At the end of the day at the construction site, I decided to take off my gloves and put my boots in storage and change clothes, and I was the last one out on the site, Yates standing at the boy's grave. I turned and saw his expression through the fence, scared, angry, amused, remorseful, or someplace in between. His face was like he was possessed by something. We were all in a construction zone, a no-go zone, and didn't know what was going on outside. The townspeople had realized that the boy Yates had killed was missing and were conducting a massive search in the city, and the police had already assumed the worst, so they imposed a curfew in the city, which was normally bustling by 9 o'clock, became a ghost town. We all visited the inn with dreadfulness and tried to hope for a better tomorrow. Just as I was about to close the door in the room, I saw Yates walking with the innkeeper, as it seemed as if he had borrowed a room. Both men were sweating. The sweat on the men's faces was not the sweat of hard work, but a mixture of fear and dread. From a moment on, I felt something dreadful was about to occur. It was not a dreadfulness of us being in trouble, but the feeling that our days were numbered. And that day has come. That day has sealed the fate of the diorama tower. When we entered the construction site, we saw thousands of maggots on the ground with no dirt to stand on, and we picked them up and walked to the office. The workers groaned as they saw the maggots crawling up their bodies. The site was filled. Why are they crawling up their bodies? They just picked them up. As we picked them up and walked to the office, the workers groaned, crawling up their... Fuck, dude. Why are the Okay. The site was filled with multiple people shaking themselves to get rid of the maggots who were infiltrating their bodies for survival. Stan opened the office door in a fit of insane bravery, and we dashed into the office store, slamming the door shut. When we looked out the window, it looked as if the maggots were coming for us. No, it felt as if they had surrounded us. We all glared at Yates, especially Stan, who was superstitious. He believed the murder may have cursed the site. Yates was also furious at the sudden blame he got when the two of them were arguing. Some of us grabbed pesticide and started to spray on the maggots. Within minutes, every maggot that was crawling had stopped moving. I took the broom and found a different hole to put the dead maggots into. As I was cleaning up the maggots, I felt an inexplicable sense of dread that these maggots appearing were now part of the larger whole. The next thing I had to do, since the place was completely clean, was to aid Yates in getting up to the crane, while I also fixed the electrical wires placed on the crane to lighten it in the dark. I took my kit and walked to the elevator, and a minute later I was standing at the topmost part of the city. The reason I got into construction was that I was never afraid of heights, and every time I... Really? That's why you got into that? Is because you aren't afraid? Okay. Every time I climbed to the top of the crane, I felt such a sense of freedom, relief, and happiness that I quickly forgot about the maggot incident on the ground below. It made me feel joyful since I saw the morning mist arise from the mountains that surrounded the construction site, like a movie scene. Like a movie scene. Back to the fucking story. I immediately got to work and started fixing the crane wires. After 10 minutes of silence, Yates suddenly said to me, period, I have a feeling that I am not going to make it out of here today. The ominous words broke my concentration. I glared at Yates. Cut the bullshit. But what he was saying wasn't bullshit. It was what everyone was thinking. Even me, like something bad would happen to us today. I was concentrating, fixing the wires, when I saw the elevator go down suddenly, and 3 minutes later, a fellow engineer working on the ground came up and said that Stan had assembled all of the engineers and asked me to come down below. Since I planned to return, I left my tools and followed my engineer buddy to the office. When we did come in, one of the main architects who was working with Stan was talking about the grounds of this construction site. The architect told us to get ready to dig a hole and start setting the building's columns, because now we need to lay the foundation for the building. We're in trouble. The digging would unearth the body of the child we had buried, and the architect, not knowing the truth, would surely call the police on us. Sensing that, Stan told the architect to give us 24 hours to get ready. The architect left, and Stan told us to get the body now. We couldn't hide this anymore, and we also didn't want to go to jail. We now thought of collecting gasoline canisters and pouring them on the ground to dispose of the body. All that was left was to dig the grave again. The boss and two others dug up the hole again. At the same time... At the same time, the rest of us surrounded the hole to ensure nobody was looking for the grave digging process. 10 minutes later, maggots started showing up, and as we thought we were at the burial ground, one of the architects suddenly gasped, Where did the body go? We already dug 6 feet under. Where is his body? What? 6 feet? Stan took a measuring tape and calculated the pit's depth, which, as his coworker said, was 6 feet. But there was no sign of the corpse, not even a bone of the boy, only maggots, and it was impossible for the corpse to rot completely for days. As we were looking at each other confused, Yates screamed from the top of the crane. When we looked up, he was backed into a corner to the edge of the crane. Above him was a small creature dressed in red, wearing a cap. The child who died on the construction site days ago by him. Unbeknownst to him, the screams were coming towards us. What? Unbeknownst to him, the screams were coming toward us, and Yates was falling from the crane like a twisted puppet. When I looked up again, there was no sign of the boy, but the others were moaning as they did see what I saw. The dead boy was at the top of the crane, and his that is supposed to be in the hole, not in the hole. Dead boy. What the fuck? Yates's body fell to the ground. His life ended there, and so did the fate of the diorama building. We all ran away from the construction site when Yates fell and died. His blood was spilling on a concrete table shaped like an altar, his body lying mangled next to it. Why would it be spilling if he fell next to whatever? Doesn't matter. Back to the story. The construction site was halted there, and no one has returned to the site, and I suspect some people have been so horrified that they will never return to the city. Yates' death was labeled an accidental death, but we all know that it was a death sentence. We all know it was a death sentence. I left the construction board and prepared to go to another city to find other work, and the day I was about to leave the hotel, Mr. Handball asked to speak to me for the last time. I followed him to his office, where Mr. Handball looked very depressed. He told me he was thinking of taking a long vacation and leaving the country for a while, and he decided to tell me his friend. When I asked him why, he told me he had learned that his son had died. I first sat down and held his hand to comfort him, and as I hugged him, I looked at the photo behind him. Mr. Handball was with his wife and son in front of an amusement park. The child we buried looking very happy. Mr. Handball asked me if he would visit me sometime in this city, and I replied yes. I don't think I'll ever see Mr. Handball again. Well, that's the end of that story. That was a fucking roller coaster. Okay, I'm gonna make sure to list this title so you can all find it before it might just get taken down. It could get taken down, because I don't really know what the rules of this fucking website are. So it could get taken down at any time, but I'll at least write down the title. The title is, I worked at the construction site for Diorama Tower. What really happened there is far worse than the public's knowledge. I don't know. It almost felt, I don't like blaming things on AI, because it seems like kind of a cop-out, because it could just be someone who wrote it really quickly or has a poor grasp of English, but that really felt like just the constant thesaurus of adjectives. It felt like AI. All right, it felt like a GPT horror story about a construction site. But I can't say that it's completely unoriginal. What's definitely not unoriginal was the narrator's hatred of children. Now listen, I'm not exactly the greatest friend of children everywhere. I haven't been a child for a very long time, and I just can't really identify with them anymore. But I don't know. I just can't figure out a reason why a construction worker would hate children enough to the point where he thinks that they cannot live. Hang on. They quote, they are too dumb to live with us and should live somewhere else and not give us a bad time. You know what? I think that's a good way to end this episode. Children, they are too dumb to live with us and should live somewhere else and not give us a bad time. My name's Dick Hickok. This is the Something's Wrong podcast. And I'll be talking to you again soon. Big projects coming up next. Up soon. Next. Yeah, next and soon. They will be happening both soon and next. And there's going to be more of them. And now that I have this new studio that I took out another loan for, it's going to be unstoppable. The growth is going to be enormous. It's going to be magnanimous. Unstoppable is what we will be. All right, you all have a nice day. Talk to you again soon. Make sure to tune in next time. Bye-bye. I feel kind of bad that the No Sleep segment kind of took over the show there at the end, but seriously, that story was absolutely batshit. Like, Diorama Tower, even the name, Diorama. Diorama is like one of those kids' art projects. Like, you put like some little sculptures and shit, or like a little painting or whatever in a box, and it's like a little model of something, like a Civil War battle. Like, you put little cannons and little clay men on like a field made out of confetti or some shit, and that's what a diorama is. What the fuck is a Diorama Tower? Was it named after someone? Was there a person named Diorama? Mercutio Diorama? Alfredo Diorama? It's got to be something Italian. Like, what the fuck is that? Anyway, I could probably make a whole episode on that story, but I hope I never have to. Anyway, kids are fucking stupid. Signing off.